going on a few weeks ago, and she's doing it tonight. So everybody, welcome Helaine Witt.
Well, in honor of a day in, well, you'll hear in my story what my point is. So when I was 16 years old, I was at my birthday party and I was blowing out my candles, and of course you don't say what you're wishing, but I was wishing that I would meet the Beatles, because it was 1964, and everyone at the party, I'm sure, had the same wish at their birthday when they blew out their candles to meet the Beatles. So I was a real fanatic Beatle fan at the time, more than most people, in that I didn't care about where I went to college or doing my homework. All I cared about was the Beatles. I didn't care about my grades. And in English class, when everybody opened up Hamlet in our English literature book, I was looking at the map of London because I knew I was going to meet the Beatles someday. And when they were picking colleges, they picked out of state or Long Island, out on Long Island where I live. But not me. I picked a school in Brooklyn or Manhattan so that if the Beatles ever came to town. This is after it was 1968, by the way. Oh, I said 64, but I thought they might come to New York other than their tour. And then if they came to New York, I could go see them on my way to or from college that day. It was my whole life. So I went to college. I got into college barely, and I went to college in Brooklyn, not Brooklyn College, but Long Island University with my C average in Brooklyn. And sure enough, one day in the newspaper, this big, a little article said, John and Paul of the Beatles are coming to New York to go on the Johnny Carson show to announce that they have a new company called Apple. And they were going to give people a chance to be stars of their own, and people should submit their tapes. At the time, they were called tapes. So what did my friend Jude and I do? We packed a little overnight bag. We packed a salami sandwich each with a pickle and mustard on rye bread, and we set out to go to the city. We eavesdropped in their office where they were having meetings to plan this, and we knew that the Beatles were supposedly going to stay at the St. Regis Hotel. Remember, it was just John and Paul. It wasn't like Hard Day's Night where there were billions of people. We got there early in the morning. I never told my parents I was doing this. I lived at home, commuting to college. They didn't know where I was. And I didn't tell you, but it was May 1968 by the time this happened, and I had a final to go to. I didn't go. I wasn't the type to cut college. I was a good girl, but I didn't go to school, and I went to the St. Regis Hotel. There were cops out there and some girls waiting, and what we did was we went underneath the cops. I think I might have even done this so that they could hurt themselves so I could get underneath them, and we got up to the floor that these people were supposed to be at, the Beatles and their managers. So we get to the floor and we find this linen closet. So we take our knapsack and our sandwiches and early in the morning, and the linen closet that we hid in wasn't a full closet. It was like a half a closet. So there we are, hiding in the closet, waiting to hear some noise on that floor. You might say, how did you know what floor to go to? When you're really a Beatle fanatic, you find things out without the internet back then. So by 10 a.m. we had eaten our salami sandwich with the mustard and on the rye bread with the pickle. We were done. We got thrown out a couple of times. We had to come back up. And finally we confronted two men who we knew were part of the Beatles party because we recognized them from all the interviews and magazines. And we said, where are they? It's getting late here. And they said, oh, they're not staying here. But if you stay in our room overnight, we will tell you in the morning where they're going to be. So my friend's name is Jude. Jude and I went in their room. They told us that in the next morning that John and Paul would be staying at their lawyer's house, Nat Weiss, and they'd be going outside the building at 11:30 the next morning. And then they said, why don't you just take off, what happened was we were in the bathroom changing to sleep over so we could see John and Paul the next day. And one of them, I didn't tell you their names, it doesn't matter, but one of them knocked on the door. They're Beatle people. and one of them's dead, so it doesn't matter who they are. So it's not funny that he's dead, but so he knocks on the door, he peeks and he says, the first problem you had to accomplish in your life's goal was to meet the Beatles. You are now going to soon approach the second. And he shuts the door and we look at each other like the three students, like, ah! And we had our flannel pajamas because we didn't care about the prom and going on honeymoons or anything. There we were. And we walk out of the bathroom and one of them's laying on his bed, and these are old Beatle men. They're not the age of me or the Beatles or nothing like that. And the other one's laying in his bed, and we lay down on the bed, and I'm here to tell you nothing terrible happened like what you see nowadays. I was very lucky. And the next morning, we went to Nat Weiss's apartment building at 11:30 in the morning. Out walked John and Paul, and you would think we would act like gaga and we were crazy. It wasn't like that. It was like we knew them, you know. And we walked through Central Park with them, and they didn't have millions of fans with them. They were with two of their Beatlemen people, and we gave them information. We told them that night on Johnny Carson, the show would be preempted by a political preliminary, whatever you call those, in May. And they looked at each other and said, then we're not going to go on TV if they're going to preempt us. I said, oh my goodness, I'm going to be the reason that the Beatles don't show up on Johnny Carson tonight. So it was really, you know, as you can imagine, every year on May 12th since 1968, I remember that date. And going back to thinking about when I blew out my candles, I now know that anything you want, any dream could come true, because I did it myself. Thank you.
Whoa. I told her to do that Beatles story.